KZ fam, back with the second video of the day, and we gonna be checking out how strong is Ainz Ooal. This is the MC of Overlord, I believe. I think so, yeah. But anyways, y'all, let's get right into this video, bro. I ain't even gonna waste more time because I gotta go to a restaurant with my mom. You know what I'm saying? It's her birthday, and I gotta hurry this shit up.
Finally here, ladies and gentlemen, and I wanted to start it off right. Welcome to the How Strong is Insert Character Here Overlord Explained series, where you guys will vote in the community poll on my channel for which character you'd like me to talk about week after week. Today will be the updated version of my pilot episode from a few months ago. Though I have made two videos about Ainz in the past, the first one had a lot of mistakes and the second one was just kind of there. So here's those two videos edited together with a little bit of added extra, just to have one concise video on record for the Supreme Overlord himself. So
this is the right one. Let's go.
If you've ever googled Ainz's stats yourself, I'm sure you've either come across the massive wall of text that is his wiki page, or the shorter summarized version of his character card. But unless you're familiar with the game mechanics that make up the DMMORPG that is Yggdrasil, potential future video by the way, then you may not have understood exactly what you were looking at with this card. Here we have Ainz Ooal, formerly known as Momonga of the heteromorphic race, with the title the strongest magic caster with the appearance of a skeleton. He's at the max level of 100, comprising mainly of the Elder Lich, Skeleton Mage, and Overlord racial classes, followed by the Necromancer and Ruler of Death job classes. But those titles probably don't mean anything to you. So as simply as I can put each, an Elder Lich is an undead evil magic caster supported by unholy life. Skeleton Mage is just a type of Elder Lich that dictates appearance, usually a skeleton body consisting of both human and animal parts. And Overlord is the final form of a skeletal Elder Lich, the highest tier undead that allows for the use of ultimate magic. Then, as I'm sure you already know, Ruler of Death and Necromancy just refer to the ability to raise and command the dead. So just as any RPG video game works, those titles are just races that are chosen at the beginning of the game to limit the abilities and skills that you can use. Ainz's character was one that focused very highly on death magic over anything else. So when Yggdrasil was still a game, in terms of actual PvP combat, his character build wasn't the best at securing victories. It was more the use of tactics and equipment that granted him success in a lot of the PvP fights. So if you're considering just his bare-bones strength, Ainz really isn't that powerful, at least when compared to the other players who would be level 100. But in the new world, how many people do we actually know that are level 100? Let's put this into a little perspective for you, just so you can make some comparisons between characters that we've seen in the anime. So Ainz is 100, all the Floor Guardians are also 100, the Battle Maids range between level 50 to level 70. Then we've got someone like Evil Eye who's level 50, Clementine, Brain, and Gazaf who are around level 30, and everyone else is just pretty irrelevant in terms of strength. When Ainz is roleplaying with Nabe as an adventurer, they tend to tone down their power levels to around that of level 30 as well, unless they're trying to put on a spectacle like they did in Season 1. Now, if we were to look at Ainz's stats, there's a clear focus on all his magic stats, tankiness, and special abilities. So clearly, he had a very specific route in mind when he was creating his character. One that allowed him to surpass the game's 300 spell limit and learn a total of 718 through his Dark Wisdom skill unique to the Overlord class. For what time? However, because of his focus on only magic skills, he's limited to the number of weapons he can use, and even more so by his class restrictions.
That makes sense.
Although it is possible to bypass these restrictions with certain equipment, as we saw him do in his fight with Shaltir. Now, let's quickly run through all his skills, abilities, and traits, but be warned, if you don't want to know the full extent of what he's capable of, then I suggest leaving now. And please, bear with me, there's quite a few to get through. It's not all 718 of his spells, but goddamn does it feel like it is. Okay, let's start with the traits that come from being a basic undead. And yes, these were taken directly from the wiki. So we have biological penalties resistance, bludgeoning vulnerability, critical hit immunity, dark vision, death immunity, disease immunity, doubled damage by fire, eating, drinking, and breathing are unnecessary, energy drain immunity, good, light, and holy vulnerability, good and holy consecrated areas vulnerability, mind affecting immunity, necromancy resistance, paralysis immunity, physical penalty resistance, poisoning immunity, recover by negative energy, and sleep immunity. These pretty much speak for themselves, since they're rather par for the course for any undead type character in a video game. But what about the Overlord race skills? We have ability damage, acid immunity, arcane vision, black halo, create undead, dark soul, dark wisdom, despair aura, which causes fear, panic, confusion, insanity, and sometimes even instant death if you've got good RNG. Then there's electric immunity, high tier magic immunity, high tier physical immunity, ice immunity, negative energy touch, negative protection, speak evil tongues, status damage, slashing damage resistance, piercing damage resistance, turn resistance, undead blessing, and unholy protection. I think what's important to point out here would be his high tier physical immunity. It makes him immune to all attacks that are below level 60. So basically, he's immune to pretty much every character he's ever encountered in the anime, excluding those in Nazarick. Then you already know Dark Wisdom lets him surpass the limit on the number of spells that he can learn. Also, his Create Undead can summon monsters that can probably just destroy the entire world if they wanted to. They're split between low, middle, and high tier undead, and if Ainz was trying to summon a high tier undead such as Eternal Death or the Pale Riders, a sacrifice of his own level XP would be required. But since gaining XP isn't as easy in the New World as it was in Yggdrasil, he tends to stray away from summoning his high tier undead. All of this stems from his class abilities that allow for the summoning of the undead. They're called Undead Aura, Undead Creation, Undead Control, and Undead Strengthening. Then he has the Rite of Darkness that amplifies his undead creation skills. If we shift over to his spells now, you'd see that there's an absolute shit ton of them, which I don't even know how any game would be able to let a single person cast all of these. I could sit here and list all of them, but I feel it'd just be me shouting out 150 names with you having absolutely no idea what I'm even saying. Instead, I've gone ahead and chosen some of my personal favorites. We've got Black Hole, which summons a void that turns you into literal nothingness. Create Fortress, which is a 10th tier spell that summons a 30-meter tall tower out of thin air. Gate, which is rather basic, but we do see it a lot since it's the teleportation spell that Ainz uses. It can transport any number of people over any distance, and will never miss the intended teleportation target. Then there's a pretty useful one called Perfect Warrior, which allows him to transfer his magic caster levels into physical strength and become a level 100 warrior. This lets him use certain weapons that would normally be restricted for his class type, but by doing so, he can't cast any of his normal spells either. A crowd favorite seems to be the 10th tier spell Reality Slash, a strike that causes a tear through the very fabric of space to reach the enemy. Other abilities that are around this scale of power would be Gravity Maelstrom, that summons a spinning vortex of hyper-intensified gravity, or the previously mentioned Black Hole. Then there's more necromancy type skills such as Thousand Bone Lance, which we saw in his fight with Shaltir as a barrage of bone type spears that are flung at a target from all directions. There's also the Wall of Skeleton, which summons a literal wall of low tier undead skeletons that can move and attack as best as a wall made of undead can. And finally, my personal favorite, Shark Cyclone. And yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. A spell that summons a 100-meter tall tornado that is the home to several 6-meter long sharks that will devour anyone that gets caught up in it. Can you imagine just playing something like World of Warcraft and then you die because some magic caster just decided to spawn Sharknado onto the battlefield? I wouldn't even be mad. But all those spells pale into comparison to his super tier magic, or as they call it in the New World, the magic of the gods. There's Creation, which alters terrain on a massive scale, Fallen Down, which casts a ray of light so bright that anything in its area of effect will be burnt to a crisp. There's Wish Upon a Star that grants the caster any wish that they want, even if it's beyond the realm of possibility. So in Yggdrasil, back when it was a game, Wish Upon a Star granted random wishes in proportion to the experience that was spent, meaning that if 10% of Ainz's total experience was used, it would grant one wish, and for every 10% more, it would grant another. Since it was a random spell from a selection of 200, there was still the possibility that the wish that you were searching for wouldn't show up as a possible one. But in the New World, Wish Upon a Star, although still requiring experience to activate, is capable of granting any wish at the user's request as long as enough experience is spent. So any wish is capable of being granted, with the exception of ones that attempt to counter effects induced by world-class items. And finally, a couple summoning type super tier magic. One that creates 6 level 80 gatekeepers, and another that summons a cyclone, where for every being killed in the cyclone, they are used as sacrifices to summon a level 90 or above monster known as the Dark Young. Aside from those super tier magic spells, there is one more that's considered his most powerful skill, and we actually saw him use it in his battle against Shaltir. It's called The Goal of All Life is Death, and it comes from having pretty much the exact build and skill set that Ainz does. Having a max level in the Overlord race, plus specializing in essentially all types of death magic, lets you level up the job class known as Eclipse. Once you're the max level of 5 in the Eclipse class, you literally become the ruler of death. This is actually a buff that is applied to any instant death type spell or ability, which allows the buffed spell to bypass any type of instant death resistance or immunity. So when he was facing Shaltir, Cry of the Banshee was the AoE spell that is used to cause instant death. But with Shaltir's immunity against that type of attack, using the Goal of All Life is Death to amplify it results in an AoE attack that literally kills everything. The downside to using this seemingly OP spell is that it takes 12 seconds to cast. And if you've played any type of game that involves spells with cast times, you'd know that if you spent 12 seconds idly trying to perform a single task, you'd most likely be dead by the end of the 12 seconds.
Facts.
Hell, I can't even properly res people in Overwatch with Mercy's shitty 1.75 second cast time. But Ainz, being the master strategist that he is, has a way to counter this 12-second cast time by literally stopping time. Ainz is capable of chronomancy, which is a type of magic that affects the flow of time. Basically, Ainz is part of the 5% of players who have mastered the timing of his skills so that the goal of all life's channeling time would be completed the moment that his time stop skill ends. Time stop and silent time stop being these skills that stop time and prevent an enemy from attacking during stop time respectively.
Nah, that's fire. That's fire as hell, bro. What?
Time stop and silent time stop being these skills that stop time and prevent an enemy from attacking during stop time respectively. So yeah, it's pretty OP. Now let's take a closer look at some of his most powerful items, including the ever so commanding Staff of Ainz Ooal. But before that, let's check out some of his divine class items, starting off with his 10 rings, each a magic item that provides some sort of buff or resistance, ranging from certain types of magic protection to penalty reduction for certain skill usage. But the most prominent ring is the Ring of Ainz Ooal.
Yeah,
there exist only 100, and only 41 were ever worn, each by the members of the guild to signify their membership. Although not entirely useful as an item outside of Nazarick, its use comes from the ability to teleport the wearer anywhere within the confines of the tomb, with exception to personal rooms and the throne room. If you're wondering what his most powerful ring is, that would have to go to the pay-to-win item Shooting Star. It's an item that allows for the use of Wish Upon a Star 3 times at no experience cost. Then everything else from his robe and belt to the jewelry that he wears are all divine class items, which just means that they have a very high capacity to hold data. He also has other equipment as we've seen in the anime, just like the Mask of Envy or a modified version of Frost Pain. But since you've seen those in action already, I'm sure you're not as curious about them as you are about the staff, the guild weapon that represents the amalgamated efforts of every member that was a part of Ainz Ooal. This is no ordinary item that was won through a mere quest or a difficult raid. It was crafted with treasure collected through many years of hunting, questing, and adventuring. The light novel put heavy emphasis on the fact that so many members of the guild had taken significant time from their real lives to put this item together. So if it represents the pinnacle of their efforts, what exactly does it do? Well, the staff is imbued with 7 gems, each a piece of a rare set that is held in the mouth of their own golden snakes that are intertwined to make the formation of the staff. Each gem alone has their own unique, powerful abilities, such as high-tier monster summons or greater control over one's class skills. But when combined, it grants the user even greater powers that would make Ainz's base stats here that much more powerful. And yes, that already overmaxed MP bar would go even higher. Although, before Ainz had entered the new world, the staff was never actually used by him, or anyone else for that matter, even though it had been custom built for Ainz's character. It was such a precious item that signified everything that the guild was, that it was just kept deep within the Tomb of Nazarick. So since the staff is also a guild weapon, it brings its classification level near to that of a world item, but not quite at the level of data capacity that can modify the very fundamental of the game, as world items were known to do. The staff also gives the wielder what's essentially moderator privileges to the Tomb of Nazarick, allowing them to modify restricted settings or NPC flavor text. Now, aside from these few pieces of equipment that I mentioned, there's still so many more, since I haven't even gone through his Dark Warrior equipment, some of his consumables, and who knows how many cash shop items this man has. But yeah, that's pretty much all the important stuff you're gonna need to know about how strong Ainz is. I apologize for this pretty much being a re-upload, but it didn't feel right having my most popular video ever have so much misinformation. And it was still getting quite a fair number of views, so I wanted to put something better in its place.
Nah, you're forgiven, alright, buddy? Listen, that was fire. Ainz Ooal, man. Strong as hell. Let's just say that. Anyways, y'all. That's how strong he is, man. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed that video. And thank you guys so much for everything, man. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy the content, make sure to hit that sub button, hit those likes, and turn on NOTI bell so you can get notified whenever I drop a video. KZ fam, stay positive, stay healthy, and most definitely keep that strong mentality, man. I'm out.